Yeah, okay. So, yeah, since we talked for last time, yeah, so I think a lot has changed. So how have you been during all this time?
No, I've been very well, yeah. A lot has changed, or hopefully progressed quite a bit, and when we last spoke I just had a sort of selection of rough demos, and in the past, I can't remember how long it's been, but 3 to 6 months, whatever it has been, I've just been working hard to try and get a few of those together, properly rehearsed with a rhythm section, and then fully recorded, which is what I believe you've heard so far.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so now it's really great news that you are going to put out 2 EPs just one after another, and it's really interesting that you decided to put one on the 4th and the other on the 5th of July, just one after another. So why did you decide to go for this kind of release pattern?
Yeah, well, I thought about, what could I do? It was just a little bit different, and I'd recorded these 3 that were the 3 tracks, the first EP that I'm going to release on on the 4th of July, and I had so much other material, and over these past few months I've written a second album, and I just thought, what, bands or artists, they always put out just an EP, and so I thought, well, why not put out, I've got 2 albums worth, so let's put 2 EPs out, and when I launch everything on the 4th of July, it'll be I just think it'll be a bit of an interesting surprise when I then promote another EP just one day afterwards. So I just thought it was a little bit different, and a good chance to, while people are hopefully interested and intrigued, to just kind of get a bit more out there. So that was the thinking, really. I just hadn't seen it that often, so I thought I'd give it a try.
Yeah, I think it looks definitely like good. It's really interesting because I've never seen anyone do anything like this. And for me, these 2 titles seem quite there seems to be some sort of connection between these 2 titles. Yeah, am I right?
Yeah, absolutely. No, you're absolutely right. Well, because the first EP, which is Better Late Than Never, was just a sort of a reference to, I felt like it's taken me quite a while to get to this point. And also, just on a side note, the rhythm section that I had come in, they're called the Late Night Rhythm, and Jack and Daryl are just I feel I should give them a generous plug for their fantastic efforts and their great skill, and they play in a band called Lady Luck and the Late Night Players. So if you want to check them out at some point, they're well worth a listen. But anyway, so Better Late Than Never was a sort of reference to me taking my time, and a little turn of the cap to the Late Night Players. And then, as you say, I just thought, well, let's release another one, and why not title it Sooner Than Expected? It seemed appropriate. There's, as you say, a nice link there. Mm-hmm. And it just kind of, I felt that although they're 2 separate EPs from what would hopefully be 2 separate albums, it kind of links the whole kind of launch together. So I thought that would be quite fun.
Yeah, how did you like bringing in new people to work at your music? What did you take away from this experience?
Yeah, I mean, I know Jack and Daryl very well from when I was at music school, so I was very confident that in their abilities and how quickly they would pick up what I was trying to do. But what I certainly felt was quite interesting, and I've experienced this before, is that having a very clear idea and clear plan and sort of direction of how you want it to sound, I felt is the most helpful, but at the same time giving both, in this case both Jack and Daryl, the sort of license to add their own sort of flavour and change the bits that I had originally put together. So I think what I found was that it's good to give people a clear direction, but also not be a complete sort of tyrant and tell people exactly what they have to play where, exactly when, and because it's it can all be a bit of a creative process together. So I thoroughly enjoyed it, and Jack and Daryl are fantastic as well. So yeah.
Cool. So it means you're not really possessive about your music, about your ideas. So it was free.
No, exactly. Because I have I have obviously an idea and I like how I'd like it to sound, but I think it's quite exciting just to see where it could then go. I mean, obviously if it sort of took a direction that I really didn't like, then I would say so. But I just, anybody that is willing to give me their time and effort, I think is going to hopefully put something into it and hopefully get a better outcome, which I think we have. I think the tracks are much better for their inputs than beforehand. So.
And what is the so as you say that just you can play the song, play something, play the music, and see where it takes you. So what's the role of improvisation in your music and your creative work?
Yeah, I mean, obviously, as I write it all by myself as it stands. I mean, there's not a sort of a band improvisational kind of aspect to it, but I do like to just go wherever it takes me. I think that's the biggest thing I've learned, and why my productivity has improved so greatly just over the past 6 months to a year, is that I tend to, in some ways, do that. I just start with a line that isn't particularly improvised, whether it's a riff or a lick or something like that, and then absolutely I just put, lay the first track down, and then just play whatever comes into my head, and maybe play it a few times until I sort of then get where I want it to go. But it's definitely something I would love to do next when I get a full band together that hopefully I'm going to be playing live with. That when we rehearse and potentially write more stuff, it'd be great to sort of have an improvisational side to it.
Yeah, and if I get back to the EPs, so you've from this huge number of really, really great songs, you had to choose only 6 for 2 of these EPs. How did you choose this song? So why did you choose these particular songs but not the others?
Yeah, no, it's really tough actually when you sort of trying to pick out songs, just a small number of songs. But what I decided to do is I tend to feel like I write sort of 3 general types of songs, and I think both EPs reflect this. So, the 3 types are very riff-heavy songs. So from the first EP, 12 Below, the track 12 Below, and then from the second EP, Sand and Stone, they're very riff-heavy, guitar-driven, solo-driven, and quite sort of thumping quite songs. I also think then the second type of song I write is a bit more of a down-the-line rock song. So in these EP cases, it's Glass Man and Stony Road. And I just feel they're a bit more big choruses, sort of a nice sort of 4 to the floor, but kind of, helps the song progress along. And then I suppose, I don't know whether a ballad is a bit too sort of self-indulgent, but a slower kind of Radiohead type style, which I think Remember Me and Empty Weight are that sort of song. So there's a lot. I think there's a lot of variety on both albums, and my dream would be to fully record both of them properly. But I feel like the types of songs on these 2 EPs just reflects my sort of general approach to songwriting. So riffs, rock, and kind of slowed down songs as well.
Yeah, so it's like a choice of all we can expect from your full length.
Yeah, exactly. I think both albums have got variety, and I think they've both got different merits and differences between them. But I think it's quite a good indication of what a full length album would include from me. And yeah, that's definitely the end. The bigger goal would be to fully record and fully put together these 2 albums, which interestingly is the approach I would then apply like these EPs, that if it ever got to that stage, I would like to actually release both albums as my first debut albums, because I don't think I've ever seen that done before. Bands obviously release a debut album, but I think it'd be very interesting to release 2 albums straight, as your first full releases, and I certainly think I've certainly got enough material, and if I had the time and the sort of studio time to record all of that material, then I'd be very keen to do so.
Yeah, it sounds like a really cool idea. And so you mentioned that you can release like 3 albums as like 2 debut albums, just something really extraordinary. And in that case, what's your attitude towards like double albums, which bands put out quite often?
Absolutely. I mean, I've always been an album man. I mean, that's what I aspire to do, is to write a great album would be just, a dream come true. Obviously, and that involves writing great songs within the album. And yeah, double albums is concept albums, double albums, all of that would be such a dream to do as well. And I just think maybe doing 2 separate albums together could just be an approach that is different from a double album or a concept album, and just maybe a bit more interesting. We definitely live in times where the album is not king on the single is probably king at the moment. So releasing a big double album that is one piece of work might be quite a bold move. But I think 2 albums, collections of songs, can only the more music, individual tracks that are out there, the more likely people are to hear those individual tracks, in my opinion. So that would be, that's what I just think it'd be interesting, something slightly different, a different way of doing it.
Yeah, exactly. Because I also noticed that it's apart from the double albums, I noticed that bands try to get their listeners interested in buying CDs in other ways. For example, I really love the way White Lies released their latest album, and the special version was with a book where they actually wrote about all the lyrics and the creation of all the songs. So I think it was really great. So what do you think? Do you think, is it really sort of way to get back the CDs, the cult of buying CDs?
Yeah, I mean, I love CDs as well. I really am quite old school in that respect. And as you mentioned, I didn't know about the White Lies album with the sort of book, but I love all of that. I think there's definitely people are still interested in associating with the band's full piece of work, and I think doing things like a book that explains, talks people through the album and how they put it together is great. I think straightforward CDs, I mean, they are obviously in decline, and I don't know, it's probably quite a business chat, but I don't know how, if one can get back to that being popular. But I think offering fans the option to buy or get your music on lots of different formats is the way to sort of appeal to everybody. So whether it is just CDs or even vinyl or big deluxe box sets with books, and because from my perspective, what I would love to do, as I said to you, is these 2 separate albums, but I'd love to do them also as a deluxe form, because I've got lots of B-sides to each album, and then I would love to put together, like I said, like a book where you talk about, explain to people the meaning, where these sort of songs come from, the influences and the stories behind them, because I think, a good song should have a good story behind it in my eyes. So, or certainly a good meaning behind it. But yeah, in answer to your question about the CDs, I don't know. If I knew the answer to that, I'd probably be a very rich man.
Okay, and as we started talking about the music and different bands, on your biography, in your press release, you mentioned so many various influences like Led Zeppelin and Muse. So these 2 are obviously bands from very different generations. And how do you think, in what way do these very different bands influence you, and what do you take away? What are the good things which you take away from all the bands from all the different epochs?
Yeah, well, I mean, I suppose it's a tough one, isn't it? You draw different influences from different bands, and as you mentioned, I sort of cite bands such as Led Zeppelin and Muse and Audioslave and Radiohead, as I mentioned before. And I think what I try and do is, I don't particularly want to emulate one particular band or just be another Led Zeppelin or another Muse, but to draw sort of small parts from each of those bands, the sort of bits that really resonate with me. So if it is, take Muse for example, probably the 2 things that I like most from that band is the kind of bass-driven riffs, things like Hysteria and Newborn, and Matt Bellamy's sort of big, powerful vocals. If it's Led Zeppelin, as much as I absolutely love John Paul Jones' bass lines and Robert Plant's vocal as well, what I probably draw most from Led Zeppelin is Jimmy Page's riff writing and sort of soloing. Likewise, if it's Audio Slave, it's that kind of pounding drum sort of sound, and then, you know, Tom Morello's just obviously a mad guitarist, so you can draw any influence from him. You know, and I mean, I could go on and on with the specifics I take out from these bands, but I think it's just, obviously if a song resonates with you, it's then just working out what is it that really resonates, and it could be either the instruments or the vocals or even just the arrangement, you know, how they sort of build dynamics and even really sort of what might be seemingly boring and technical things. I just like taking all the different parts from different bands and different songs, and then hopefully finding my own sound within that. It's obviously all very, my influences are in some ways quite focused because it is all rock music, if you want to sort of paint it with that one brush, but I think it's taking very fine sort of minutiae out of each band is what I try and draw upon. So yeah, that's probably how I feel about those.
Mm-hmm. So in a way, I think it's what we can call our generation, even despite such a, well, maybe in a way poor situation with the cities and other stuff, we can call our generation really lucky because we have so many bands to look at, like bands from the past and so many bands from the present. Yeah,
I couldn't agree more. I mean, we are very lucky because you only need to hear a bit of one song and get the name or something like that, and you can then explore that band, and then there's so many features on the internet that can take you to bands that sound like other bands, and there's blogs like your own blog where you know, I've found bands on your blog that I'd never heard of before, and then you know, it's such a great way to now share, and as you say, we've got all this old stuff, if sort of inverted commas, the present stuff, the big bands, and then lots of kind of, you know, smaller bands that you might have just seen, you know, at a small gig that you went to, but now that they are able to have an online presence, you can sort of go back and listen to what they've been doing, and absolutely, I mean, there's nothing to stop us being really, you know, really creative now, because we can hear and access everything and develop and work on whatever we want to do, and then share it with other people as well. So yeah, absolutely. But I suppose it does all still come back to the big heavy hitters. So.
And what do you think? Yes, of course, this sort of accessibility is of course good, but do you think is there a downside?
Yeah, I mean, absolutely. It's, you know, especially from trying to get people to hear your stuff. You know, there's so much out there and so many people doing this, and music has become so, like music in general has become so saturated with so many people doing so many different things, pardon me, and the different sort of standards and quality, that it's really hard trying to separate yourself from the crowd, and also then find those people that you think might like your music. Obviously, you know, there's always that debate as well. If you take it one step further into how much money can be made out of, you know, streaming and all of this sort of stuff. But from my perspective, I would just want people to hear what I've been doing and just kind of get it out there. I think that the hardest thing is trying to sort of, you know, fight to see the sunlight, basically, and show people.
Yeah, I think that's the way, definitely. And now, so you've come to such a huge, very important milestone in your career. Looking back, how would you estimate the way to this milestone of these two EPs finally being released officially to people?
Yeah, well, absolutely. I mean, it's taken a long time, although obviously, you know, the whole process is somewhat enjoyable. I felt for a long while that what I was writing just wasn't quite where I wanted it to be, and it was like that for ages, and then, I can't remember when it was, but a number of months ago, it just clicked, and I finally felt, actually, I've now got material that I actually think is worth listening to, and I'm actually excited by, and so that was probably the bigger weight, knowing that I'd actually reached the point that I wanted to get to, and then, as you say, the months of putting the stuff together was rehearsals and organising studio time, and now that I've actually got those two pieces tangibly in my sort of digital hands, it's a huge weight, and I'm just really looking forward to getting it out there, and then hopefully using it as a springboard to start, actually playing this stuff live and finding a band to get this going with.
Mm-hmm. And so also what surprised me a lot in your press release, in your biography, that as I understood it, you decided to start. It was like a really, not really spontaneous, but you acted on a whim when you decided to, ditch it all and start making music. Or how do you think, what's the role of these sort of decisions when you just decide that it's now or never, and you get up and do it? So what's the role of such decisions in, I think in life, just in any area of life?
Yeah, well, absolutely, yeah. I mean, as you say, I was, for obviously people that haven't seen that or read about it, I started working at an investment bank and then decided that I just didn't want to do it. And I think that it's those, that whether they're push or pull decisions, but it's those moments where you really have that crossroads choice that make you really want to do it. I mean, I played guitar and dabbled with this sort of stuff for ages, but it's when you get to that point of realisation that if you don't have a go at doing this now, you'll never ever do it. And I think that then helps propel you to really, really sort of commit to it 100%. And I then gave that up and went to music school for a year, and I was totally committed to it and totally focused on getting as much as I could out of it, because I knew that this is my one shot, and now I've made that decision to turn away from what could have been a very successful banking career, but not particularly fulfilling, and to try and do something as however crazy and ridiculous and with no particular plan to it, was just something I had to try. And I think, I couldn't be more happier that I made that decision. And even if whatever comes next, I don't know, but at least I can grow to be an old man and know that I at least gave it a good try, and I at least did what I had always wanted to do. And that goes back to your point about actually getting these EPs done. That I've actually done it now. So in some ways, if that's all I ever achieved, then that's a good achievement by my standards.
Well, I believe that there must be really a huge sense of fulfillment and achievement in that case, even.
Yeah.
Okay, and then finally, what's your advice to those people who want to make the step, but they just don't have the guts to do it just now? What's your advice?
Yeah, well, absolutely. I mean, obviously, from a musical perspective, I've not conquered the world. I've not achieved any more than what is out there. But if you do get these points, I'm still obviously very young, but there are definitely points in life where you have to make this decision, whether it's music or whatever it is, and I don't really know what advice I would give, but just if you find yourself in this sort of situation, to just look at all your options and definitely commit to a decision. And once you've made that decision, to not sort of waver from it and just commit to it fully. And ultimately, if you keep moving, it's better than standing still. And so even if you go down, maybe a path that isn't quite right, as long as you keep moving, you can come back and get off it, in my opinion, quite easily. And it's amazing what the sort of people and opportunities you can meet and make from making a decision that seemingly is a bit off the wall. But it's about I think if you make a decision, it's then really embracing it and looking to get as much as you can out of it, and keeping your eyes open and keeping moving. So I wouldn't ever want to say to somebody, just go and do it, because it's got to be right, and you've got to have that kind of burning desire and kind of niggling thought that you can't resolve unless you actually make the decision. But just to kind of don't be afraid to kind of have a go, because things can you never know what can happen.